Mark and I have some grades to give out to every single full-time driver in the Cup Series.
Yeah, so we decided to go ahead and hand out, progress reports effectively for the Cup drivers for their first quarter of the year. The grades are obviously subjective. There is no mathematical equation that goes into them. Based on a variety of factors, this certainly isn't what we would necessarily have given them if we saw their stats at the beginning of the year and then just signed a grade based on that. The expectations are certainly baked into it, into the overall grade. So it'll go through random team order, starting off with our Daytona 500 winner, Austin Cindric. I gave him a B+. It's not been a fantastic year. Obviously, you win the Daytona 500. That's going to be a pretty good year regardless of how it shakes out. Has been pretty up and down since then, the Daytona 500 being his only top 5 of the year. He only has one other top 10 to begin with. That has hung around, staying in playoff contention in the points. So I think it's worthy of a B+.
Kind of on the same page as you here. Went a little lower, B-. Hasn't really showed me a ton outside of that Daytona 500 win. Did end up having a pretty good run at COTA. That's his best run of the season, at least finish, other than that Daytona 500 win, which is what you expect out of Austin Cindric. But all in all, he had some big shoes to fill, stepping in for Brad Keselowski in that 2 car, and he's been okay. I think, like you said, the really good thing he's done is he hasn't, he didn't get that Daytona 500 win and then fall back to 25th in points. He's still in the top 16 right now. Even if he didn't have that win, he'd be battling for a playoff spot. So all in all, so far, a pretty solid season, solid rookie start for his, a solid start to his rookie season for Austin Cindric.
Next up, Ryan Blaney, currently sitting second in points. Although he is winless, he's been very consistent. Currently tied for the most top 10, second most top 5s. So the second most laps, but he still needs a win. And when you're in the caliber of ride that Ryan Blaney is, and your caliber of driver Ryan Blaney is, you have a win to break into that A or A- category even. Right now I have him also at a B+.
Yeah, great minds think alike, I guess. Pretty much same page here as well. B+ for me for Ryan Blaney as well. He's shown consistent top 5, top 10 speed week in, week out. He has won some stages. It just, he's not finishing the job, and that's been the story for Ryan Blaney through most of his career. This does seem like par for the course for him, unfortunately, but he is second in points, so he is racking up the points. He is getting the stage wins. He's putting himself in a good position to contend for the regular season championship, but he's got to start winning. And I'm with you. If those wins start to come, that B+ is going to get up into that A range. But right now, I feel that's the best I could do for him as well.
Personally, with just a win, he'd probably be an A right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
All right, up next, the final Penske car, Joey Logano. I have him at a B-. He's been consistent, but has mostly just stayed out of trouble. Has not been near the front as much as Ryan Blaney, or even as Chase Elliott, who, although he has more top 5s than him, Chase has spent more time at the front so far. Only led 34 laps this season. Also without a win. I have him at a B- right now.
I give him a B because this is kind of what I thought Joey would do. Being third in points is a bit of a surprise. I think that really speaks to how the season's gone for everybody so far and the randomness the new car has produced. 5 top 10s, 3 top 5s. Again, the 34 laps led, that's a bit of a problem. No stage wins as well, even though he is getting the stage points. It's been an okay year for Logano. Does need to turn it up, especially if you want to make a run in the playoffs, but for where he is right now, decent start to the season. I'm going with a B.
All right. Up next, the Penske affiliated driver, Harrison Burton for the Wood Brothers. I currently have him at a D-. It was an absolutely horrendous start to the season. He has turned it around a little bit as of late. Started off the season with just 1 top 20 in the first 5 races. In the last 4, has since accrued 3 top 20s. Without that, he'd probably be sitting in an F right now. But the only driver in points that he's beating that is not Rick Ware car and is not Brad Keselowski, who has a 100-point penalty, is Ricky Stenhouse and Corey LaJoie. And Even being a rookie, I still would have expected him to be ahead of some other people and have had a little bit better runs than he's had so far. So right now I have him at a D.
I have him at a D. I was a little bit impressed with him at Daytona. You do have Penske equipment. I think you're expected to run good at the plate tracks, and I really felt like going into that Daytona 500, he was the rookie that might end up in victory lane with how he ran in his duels, and he was running really good before he ended up on his lid. Outside of that, though, it's been pretty bad. I was expecting him to not run as good as Matt Benedetto, but at least closer to what Matt Benedetto put up in that car last year, and it just hasn't been there. As you said, he has turned it around a little bit over the last month or so. Hopefully he can keep that going, but right now, other than his highlight reel moment in the Daytona 500, there hasn't really been much to show for Harrison Burton this year.
All right, up next, Austin Dillon for Richard Childress Racing. Right now, I have him at a B-. He is still in the playoff hunt. He has had issues, not necessarily of his own doing, whether they be the team issues, just bad luck. He is, in terms of speed, shown less than his teammate, although they are pretty close in points. A little bit less close after this weekend, but still were pretty close in points going into the weekend. Already has more top fives than he had last year. So he's had some, and has had lost at least a couple top tens along the way. So not a great year, but a solid year. I have him at a B-.
Once again, I think I hope a lot of these were on the same page, because that means we are thinking alike and we do feel the same way about the drivers. I also have Austin at a B-. Hasn't shown the speed that Tyler Reddick has, at least in terms of race winning speed. I feel like he's been maybe a little more consistent at where he's at. Not saying he's been better than Reddick from consistency, but Reddick has been a little over the place sometimes. Austin, I feel like, is around that, 10th place, unless he has problems. And that unfortunately has happened to him a bit. Phoenix was one, looked like he was well on his way to a top 10, got spun in the last turn by Daniel Suarez. Bristol a couple days ago as well looked like he had possibly a top 5 run going before the engine ultimately cut out on him, and then he started that wreck that took out some other drivers. It's shaping up to be a similar season to what he had last year. I think he's going to float around that playoff bubble. If they could, get rid of some of these issues that have plagued them so far, assuming we don't have any crazy winners, I think he's going to be able to squeak into the playoffs. But right now he's on that bubble. They just have to keep it straight. It's really what they have to do. If they can do that, I think he might be in the playoffs comes the fall.
Up next is RCR teammate Tyler Reddick. I have him at a B+ right now just because I don't think, for the most part, you can get into that A without a win. Tyler Reddick, although not necessarily the caliber of driver that Ryan Blaney is, at least so far in his career, still high on the list of drivers people expect to get a win going into this season. Of our 3 first-time winners and Tyler Reddick, most people probably would have had him first. Does already have the most laps led in his career and has already tied his career high for top 5s. Things have gone a little bit different. He would have at least one win, if not more, but right now I have him at a B+.
I also have him at a B+. Should have probably won the Bristol Dirt Race a couple nights ago. If he doesn't have the tire issue, and then even with the tire issue at Fontana, if he doesn't get sideswiped by William Byron, he might be able to recover from that and still win that race. There's a not so distant reality where he could possibly have as many as 3 or 4 wins. He has shown that much speed, in my opinion, throughout the year. Circumstances, obviously, the reason why he doesn't have any. But this is somebody, if they could just get that win, I could see him getting up into that A range. I'm a little nervous right now because if they don't iron things out, he is only sitting, it looks like, 11th in points, but the speed is definitely there. Just if he could catch a little bit of a break, we're going to be talking about him in victory lane. Hopefully that is very soon.
Up next, the GMS Petty team, starting with Ty Dillon. I actually have Ty at a C+ right now. Has all top 25 finishes except for his crash at Atlanta. Got just this past weekend the second non-plate top 10 of his career. Currently has the highest average finish he's had in his career. I think most people expected this equipment to be the best equipment he's been in his career, but sitting 21st in points, I think that's a lot higher than most people would have had him. And has mostly just, rode along, but gotten the finishes he needed to get.
I also have him at a C+, consistently in the top 20. That's really more than you could ask for at a Ty so far this year. probably the best showing he's had, over a certain, extended amount of time in the Cup Series. If he can just keep doing that, even if he's not a playoff driver, I think it's a pretty solid year, and that's why we got him at a C+.
Eric Jones, his teammate, I currently have at a B minus. Almost went with a B, but I decided to stick with a B minus. He's definitely shown a lot of speed at times, but has just struggled to avoid issues. But he is right now. That's the best the Petty car has looked since at least 2017, and without the issues, I'm sure it'd be more than that. Already has the top 5. Didn't have any of those last year. Currently sitting outside the playoffs, but on the bubble in 19th. So right now I have him at a B minus.
I have him at a C+. The speed was there at the beginning of the year for sure. I just feel like over the last couple weeks, they've kind of taken maybe a half step back. Given everything that's going on right now, while he is exceeding my expectations, just the fact that I personally feel like they're beginning to slide keeps them out of that B range for me, but still C+, very solid start for Eric Jones. Hopefully they could bump it back up to what they were doing earlier in the year, and maybe they can make a charge for a playoff spot.
Up next, the Hendrick Motorsports crew, starting with Kyle Larson. I have him at a C right now. He has the win, and that's obviously great, but the team has just struggled with consistency, be it his own fault, be it not. You still got to get those finishes, and right now, while they were able to avoid them all last year, I think all of that's coming down on them now. He already has as many finishes of 30 plus that he had all of last year. And even just in terms of overall speed, has probably been 4th on that team overall.
Yeah, no, I actually have Larson a bit higher. I have him at a B. I think the speed is there. When he hasn't had issues, his worst finish is 5th. So it seems to me like it's a Tyler Reddick situation where the problems do seem to possibly be out of their control. He got run over by Kevin Harvick at Daytona. Granted, Daytona's Daytona. It is what it is. An engine issue at Phoenix that ruined a top 10 day for him. Very surprising to have those types of problems, especially in today's day and age of NASCAR. Atlanta, again, was running around the top 5, top 10 when he got wrecked by Denny Hamlin. Wasn't that great at Coda. Probably had about a top 15 car. Ended up getting a wreck at the end of the race. Finished 29th. Martinsville's the only bad race where I feel like they lack speed this year. So outside of that, I think he's had, top 5, top 10 speed in the majority of the races they've had issues. They have to clean it up. He's led a lot more laps than, Alex Bowman. So I definitely don't think he's had the slowest speed in terms of the team, but it's a B. Solid B right now. If they can clean it up, it's going to be higher.
All right. Up next, teammate Chase Elliott. I have him at a B right now, which is part of why I had Larson at a C. He is leading the points, and that's good, but they have just struggled as a team to close out the finishes where they've been running. Only has one top 5. And leading has a lot of stage points, but they got to be able to close it up more. I have him at a B.
Yeah, really just a copy and paste for me on what we have on Ryan Blaney as well with Chase. They show the speed, just doesn't really have the results to match it. I think moving forward, they could probably fix it, but right now, even though he's the points leader, I got to give him a B+. He needs that win.
Yeah, just, Ryan Blaney's had more top 5s, couldn't give him the same grade.
I understand that. I think the speed's there with Chase. They just have to clean it up. It's hard for me to give him something worse because he is the points leader at the end of the day.
By 3 points, but
Still the points leader.
Up next, William Byron. I have him at an A. He's already set career high in wins and laps led. Has more top 5s than the same point last year. 2 wins, one of them in pretty dominating fashion, at least in the last half of the Martinsville race. I think he's been very, very solid, very good. Have him at an A.
I have him at an A-. Only driver with 2 wins on the season, already a career high for laps led. He's just had a couple races where he's kind of disappeared. But outside of that, career year for William Byron, A-. And it's not going to shock me one bit if that continues to go up as the season goes on.
All right. Up next, Alex Bowman. I have him at a B right now. The team has just been far more consistent than they had been in the past. Currently sitting 5th in points, which is up there with the highest they've ever been in the regular season. I think they actually were like at 3rd at one point last year, and then it just all fell apart. So we'll see what happens. But the issue right now is I just would like to see him have more time spent up at the actual front. He is 14th among the current playoff drivers for laps led. Definitely want to get that number up. Want to spend more time at the front. but I do have him at a B right now.
I have him at a B minus, even with the win. Only 16 laps led. That's a problem. His only other top 5 was at Coda, which you can make the argument he had a top 5 car at the end of the race, but he, in typical Alex Bowman fashion, seemed to come out of nowhere. In terms of top end speed, I think he is the 4th out of the Hendrick cars. I think that's backed up by the fact he has led the least amount of laps out of all of them. But he has the win solidly in the playoffs. I will say their bad days are not as bad as they have been in the past. So that team is trending in the right direction. I just need to see more speed out of them in terms of top 5s and contending for wins.
Yeah. Okay. Up next is Brad Keselowski, new, not team technically, but does have a new team for him. I have him at a D plus right now. Without the penalty, he would be 2 points out of a playoff spot. But just in terms of speed, they've just lacked it. They've managed to stick around and get a decent finish, but they just have not had any kind of speed. I expected him to do a decent amount better than Chris Buescher, and he just hasn't. Without the penalty, he'd probably be at a C minus, which is mostly just because I think Chris Buescher's been better than I expected. But with the penalty, just because it basically eliminates any chance of racing his way in, he's got to go out there and win. Now I have him at a D plus.
Just overall performance out of Keselowski this year, he's pretty much been where I thought. I have him at a C. Maybe I thought he would have some more bad days than he's had, and maybe a few more, better days. Only one top 10 is a little bit disappointing, but his average finish is still around 16th, so it's close to where I thought he'd be. It hasn't been an awful season if you ignore the penalty, but he's going to have to win a race right now. But all in all, I think RFK is at least a little bit on the upswing, so I'll give him a C so far to start the year.
All right, up next, teammate Chris Buescher, which, like I said, is probably the reason I have Brad. It would be a C minus without the penalty. I expected Brad to be a good bit ahead of Buescher, both in just overall standings and average finishing. They're pretty close to each other. So I have him at a C plus. His biggest knock right now is just no stage points. There's a severe lack of stage points, and that's hurting his chance to be able to race his way into the playoffs. Pretty sure he has the fewest stage points of anybody that's in front of him in points. Right now, just has been pretty consistent with what he's done at Roush. So at least so far, right now, Brad coming over isn't paying any dividends to the performance of the team. But it's still early, and I would not be surprised if they start improving as the year goes on.
Yeah, I also have Buescher at a C plus. I think a lot of people were thinking it's going to be a make or break season for him, especially with Brad coming over. And he's pretty much right on top of where Brad is. So for anybody that thought maybe Chris Buescher would be shown the door in the next year or two, doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. He seems to be matching his team owner in Keselowski. And if they can keep going, even if it's not a playoff berth this year, I think they're beginning to set the foundation for that team to possibly improve in the years to come. So C plus for Buescher so far to start the season.
All right, up next, Front Row Motorsports, starting with Michael Mcdowell. His performance overall has certainly taken a step back from the early part of last year. Obviously, he won the Daytona 500, but then after that, managed to stay up into the 16th in standings, up into pretty late in the season, and is currently sitting 26th. He's only had 3 lead lap finishes so far. Last year, at the same point, he had 5. Schedule is obviously a little bit different, so that does make up for some of it, but C minus for Michael.
Yeah, also a C minus for me for McDowell as well. He's just been, to use a phrase, kind of mid this year. Nothing special. I know he has the 2 top 10s, but he's been kind of invisible. And like you said, at the beginning of last season, granted the schedule was different, you saw a lot more out of him. Right now, he's kind of just there. You can make the argument he's taken a step back, so C minus so far for McDowell.
Todd Gilliland, I have it a C plus. Has been okay. Has not reminds me very much of John Hunter when he was in the car. Maybe a little bit slower than John Hunter was, but kind of just stays out of trouble, races the way, gets the finish as he can. Currently is only 1 spot behind McDowell in the standings, and actually has more lead lap finishes than McDowell. He has 5 versus McDowell's 3.
I also have Gilliland at a C plus. He's been very impressive to me. At least in terms of keeping the car clean. That's something you really want to see out of a rookie. outside of the 2 plate races we've had so far this year, Daytona and Talladega, he's completed all but 7 laps. And even if you want to throw those 2 races in there, he's completed 2,388 laps out of a possible 2,434. That's 98.1%. And if you're not like A plus top tier caliber rookie who's expected to go out there and win races, I want my rookies to keep their car clean, and that's what he's done. Far, far different than what we saw out of Anthony Alfredo last year. And even John Hunter, while he was faster the year before, he did tear up some race cars. Todd has done the opposite. Very good, keeping the car clean, out of trouble, C+ so far.
All right, up next, we have Joe Gibbs Racing, starting with Denny Hamlin, who I have at a D. If he didn't win at Richmond, it'd probably be an F. He's currently last among the Toyota drivers in the standings. He's already tied the second most DNFs he's had in his career. Has had a couple strong races outside, really one strong race outside of Richmond, which is probably why it's not a D-. It's just been a really, really bad year starting off for Denny Hamlin, so I have him at a D.
Yeah, just copy and paste. It's a D for me as well. That Richmond win saves him from getting an F. It's as simple as that. Very disappointing, especially when you look at the past couple seasons Hamlin has had. It's been awful. They have time to turn it around, but right now, thank God they have that win, because if they didn't, it would just be it'd be the worst season ever for him. It might arguably already be that, but a D so far for Hamlin.
For Kyle, I have him at a B+. Stats right now probably would have been more of a B, but when you factor in just what's clearly been some Toyota struggles, he still managed to sit 6th in standings, has a win, has 6 top 10s, which is tied for the most in the series. He's been solid, not spectacular, but solid. I have him at a B+.
I also have him at a B+. I think no matter where you slice it, he should have one win this year. Even if you say he backed into the Bristol win, luck took him away from getting the Las Vegas win. By far the most consistent out of the Toyota drivers. I'm with you. Maybe the numbers don't show it, but given the fact Toyota's been a little bit behind the 8 ball so far with the new car this year, a B+ seems about right for Kyle in my eyes.
At Truex, I have him at a B-. Almost went with a B just because he is only 1 spot behind Kyle in the standings, but has also just had some struggles at some tracks he's normally been pretty good at. Had a very mediocre car at Phoenix. Same thing with Martinsville. Was straight up bad at Bristol Dirt after being really good last year. But like I said, he is 7th in points despite the inconsistencies. So I have him at a B-.
I have him at a C. I mean, there's really only been 1 or 2 races where I've liked what I've seen out of him this year. The stage points and the stage wins that he got at Daytona definitely helps this season, but this is one of those guys where when you have the expectations that you have going into the season with him, he just hasn't lived up to them. Again, not an awful season, but for what I expected out of Truex, I can't give him more than a C at this point.
Up next, we have Christopher Bell, who I have at a C+. Would have been a D, maybe even F just a few weeks ago. If we just graded it on the last month and a half, it'd probably be a B+. He has the second most overall speed of the Toyotas, I feel at least. And if not for penalties, he could potentially have 5 straight top 10s right now. With I don't remember if it was a loose tire or what at Martinsville, or not a loose tire, but a removal of equipment or whatever that rule is, and obviously the penalty at Atlanta that took away 2nd place. After being pretty deep outside of the playoffs just a month and a half ago, has already worked his way up and is that bubble driver right now. So C+.
I also have him at a C+. Similar situation to say Tyler Reddick, not to the extreme of Tyler Reddick, but the speed is there with that car. They have to clean up their issues, some of which are with Bell, some are which with the team. But the recovery he's had to go from where he was to where he's at now over the last month shows that there's something there with this team. Hopefully he can keep trending upwards, but a C+ right now. And if that speed continues, it's going to be a lot higher comes the next quarter when we get to the halfway point in the season.
All right. Up next, the only full-time driver for Rick Ware Racing, Cody Ware. Have him at a C. He's been less of a roadblock this year. Was going to give him a C-, but then I remembered he did have his career best finish already this year. I think he's just right where you would kind of expect them. The only time he's really been had any attention given to him was at Bristol, where I mean Chase was struggling to pass him, and it wasn't the easiest to pass there. But C.
You're a little bit nicer than me. I went with a D plus. Oh, you're right. He hasn't really been a moving chicane like we've seen from him in the past, but he is still the worst driver in the series, at least in terms of the full-time drivers. He is getting better, but D plus right now. That's really the best I could do given the results.
All right, up next, Stuart Haas, and I have Kevin Harvick at a C minus. Overall, has shown less speed than last year, and especially when you compare it to his teammates, where last year he was just wiping the floor with them. This year he's definitely slower than Chase Briscoe, and maybe only a tick faster than Eric Almarola, but maybe even slower. Eric started the year pretty good. On pace for not just this worst season at SHR by far, but also on pace for his worst overall season since 2009.
Yeah, I also have Harvick at a C minus, similar to Truex. He's just not, running up to the expectations I set for him at the beginning of the year. I thought we were going to see a bounce back season from him. Now I'm beginning to wonder if we're beginning to see a Jimmy Johnson-esque decline out of him. His best run was Richmond. You could argue he only got there because of the tire strategy. Had sixth place at Phoenix. I think when a lot of people think of Phoenix and Kevin Harvick, you think better than that. Unfortunately for him, the numbers just aren't there. If this continues, I'm going to start worrying about him making the playoffs. So C minus right now. Let's see if he can turn it around in the coming weeks.
Eric Almarola, I have him at a B minus. Currently second among the Stuart Haas drivers in the points. He's, other than the win, obviously last year he got the win, but outside of that, he's already almost matched last year's overall numbers. This is right now the third best average finish he's had of his career. Was the last driver to miss the top 10 to start off the year. Just been a pretty solid start, B minus.
I also have a B minus compared to how he started last year and ran for most of last season as well. Definitely a nice turnaround. Good to see him doing this in what is going to be his last full-time season. I think he is beginning to slide off the speed that he had at the beginning of the year, but just given this, the first 9 races, what we've seen out of him, B minus seems like a pretty fair grade.
Up next, Chase Briscoe. I have him at a B plus. Almost, it was right on that line, B plus, A minus. He's already matched and even surpassed most of last year's number. Has lacked consistency somewhat. Right now, he does only have 1 win, 2 top 5s, and 3 top 10s. Should obviously have at least 1 more top 5 and 1 more top 10 had he just finished second at Bristol. Or if the move would work, would also have 1 more win to go with it. So just with those numbers right now, only 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s. Even though he's had speed, I can only give him a B plus.
Yeah, pretty similar reasoning for my grade as well. I did go with a B though. He's got to learn how to finish races. The speed is there. He has the win. But, just self-inflicted errors. I think that's the biggest reason why I go with the B. Got into some issues at the end of Coda, had to pit, even though that wasn't his fault. That was from getting shoved off course. But then with a chance to go through the field, he had some more run-ins, ended up finishing 30th. Obviously, Bristol last week, he's just a little less aggressive. He finishes second. You can't be having those mistakes, even though he has been impressive. I expected a jump from him this year. So he's got to learn to finish races. If he doesn't, you're looking at an early playoff exit. If he could figure that out, maybe he can make a deep run. A B right now for Chase Briscoe, and we'll see what he could do for the rest of the year.
Cole Custer, I have him at an F. I mean, there's no other way to put it. By far been the worst of the Stuart Haas cars. Right now, second worst with Harvick sitting in 13th in points. Cole Custer is 24th. He is the only driver. Well, sorry, he's one of 5 drivers that are full time that does not have a top 10 yet this year, but is by far the only one in a truly contending equipment. The other 4 being Justin Haley, Todd Gillis, and Harrison Burton, and Cody Ware. Some of those teams aren't all bad, but he is by far in the best one. So just straight up an F.
I went with D plus. He's showing a little bit of speed, just a little bit, but it seems like every time there's a little bit of a bright spot for him, something goes wrong. Something needs to change there, and it's obviously not going to be the driver given his ties. They have to figure out how to make that team better in the 41 car. So again, D plus right now. Yeah, just not a good start right now for Cole Custer.
Right up next, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for JTG Doherty Racing. Also have him at an F. He's only ahead of Brad, Corey LaJoie, and Cody Ware in points. Brad obviously has a 100-point penalty, and even then, he's still only 2 points ahead of Brad and 3 points ahead of Corey LaJoie. No top 20 finishes since Fontana, and even that time, only one top 25. Only 2 lead lap finishes, which is actually tied for the fewest among all full-time drivers, tied with Cody Ware, and I think that's it. Just straight up been a bad season. Had some speed at times, but they just have an every which way thing that can go wrong does. I got to give him an F.
I gave him a D. Auto Club was really his only good race. Did have a chance to win the Daytona 500 before he got spun by Brad. Just everything's gone wrong for him. I still think maybe there's a little bit of speed there. It's not like, he's had more bright spots than Cole Custer, but the bad spots have been far worse. So D right now for Stenhouse. I'm not feeling too great about them moving forward, but we'll see if they can turn it around.
All right, Justin Haley for Colleague, one of the full-time cars for Colleague, but the only full-time driver. I had him at a D+. Right now, he has had some decent races, but they've just struggled to finish well. He only has 3 top 15s. He does have no DNFs and 6 lead lap finishes, but I expected top 15 with a little bit more consistency, which probably would have put him at a C if he had that. Right now, I got a sitting lost him, 25th in points. I got to have him at a D+.
I have him at a C-. They started the year showing more speed, didn't necessarily have the results, and I feel like over the last couple weeks, it's going backwards. He is a rookie still, so I didn't have the highest expectations, especially with a team that they're going from part-time cup racing to 2 full-time teams. I thought there'd be some growing pains. C- right now. Let's see what they could do. Degas this week. Justin Haley's a good plate racer. Maybe they could turn it around instantly.
I get that he is technically a rookie, although he did run 31 of the
It's
races
true.
last
Technically,
year.
he's not a rookie. He's a rookie in terms of actually running for cup points, but yeah. Is he actually a rookie? I don't think
No,
they
I don't.
gave him
I
the
don't know. I
exemption.
don't. I think they removed the exemption.
Yeah, I think you're right.
31
scratch
starts
that.
last year.
Scratch that on the rookie part, but in terms of this equipment, it's not Spire junk, so it's a bit different than what he's used to running.
Yeah, I mean, anyway. Corey LaJoie, I also have him in a D+ right now. I just expected more from Spire based on the way they talked about this car, and they've pretty struggled. They struggled a lot with speed. It's been a little bit better last month or so, but right now he only has 2 races. He only has 2 DNFs, which is good. And did get his first career top 5, so that's why he's not a D. But just in terms of overall performance of what I expected, D+.
Yeah, I went with a D. I'm more disappointed in them than you are by the sound of it. The way they hyped up this season, outside of that run at Atlanta, they just haven't had it. They've been pretty close to what they have been in the past. I don't see that jump that they were, teasing all off season and parts of the end of last year as well. So a D for right now, and it's another one where I'm not seeing it in terms of a turnaround. They're probably going to float around where they are for the rest of the year.
All right. Up next, we have for 2311, Bubba Wallace. He is sitting ahead of Denny in points, but it's been a pretty big struggle with speed. I have him at a D. He only has 2 races in which his average running position was 15th or better, those being our 2 quote-unquote plate tracks. I don't really want to call Atlanta a super speedway. It's that word doesn't really mean anything. So you have people that consider other tracks super speedways. So just what I would guess we would refer to, even though they haven't been plates in years, as plate racing. It's the only tracks where he's had an average running position inside the top 15. So I'm at a D.
Yeah, D+, same reasons. I also think this is really going to be a big year for Bubba because you have a teammate in Kurt Busch coming over. You kind of see what the car could do. Did I expect him to match Kurt Busch? No, Kurt's a champion. But he's just so far off of what Kurt's been able to do. I find some issue with it. They got to make some changes. D+ right now. Again, just like Justin Haley, we're going to Talladega, a plate track. Maybe they can turn it around and get some momentum this week.
Right up next is his teammate Kurt Busch, who I have right now at a C-. In terms of where they've ran, it probably would be closer to a C+, a B-. They've had some combination, I guess, of how they've ran and how they finished. They started off the year, certainly took their time in the race to get up to speed, but still had top 15s in 4 of the first 5 races and top 20s in all of them. Since then, 3 finishes of 32nd or worth. Not always his own doing, getting caught up in other issues, team having issues, but still, they are a team. And right now, he's plummeted from 5th in standings all the way down to 20th. Only a couple spots ahead of his teammate, so I have to have him not much higher than a C-.
Yeah, I have Kurt at a C+. He's doing better than I thought. I just didn't know where to stack up 23-11 coming into the year. He's had some good runs over the last couple of weeks. He's had problems, just incidents not of his own doing. Coda, I believe he was spun out. I think he got into some issues at Richmond and obviously Dirt Bristol. The speed seems to be there. Their biggest issue is getting stage points. They cannot afford these bad days.
The speed's only there at the end of the race is the problem.
Right. And that's my point, is that they need to find a way to get that speed in the first 2/3 of the race. They need to get those stage points. If they don't do that, they cannot have any more bad days. They're in the playoff hunt still, but they have to figure out how to be fast in the early stages of these races.
Up next, on our final team, Trackhouse, I have Ross Chastain at an A. He leads the series in top 5s, probably has the most races in which he was in contention at some point to win. He has been a bit boomer bust in terms of his finishes. Does have, like I mentioned, 5 top 5s. Also, in the other 4 races, 19th or worse. So certainly some boomer bust there, but just especially with what I estimated him to do going into the year, and I think my expectations were probably already higher than most people's. He's exceeded those.
Yep, I also have him at an A. My expectations, I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. I thought he was going to basically run about where he did with Ganassi last year. So for him to come out and just, be on the hot streak that he had been earlier in the year, he has cooled off a little bit, not to his own doing. Obviously, they have mechanical issues at Bristol, but you have the win. Just like Tyler Reddick, I think you can make the argument he could have 3 or 4 wins if things broke slightly different in his favor. But based on the expectations I had and where he's at right now, he's an A. Only driver I believe I actually gave an A. I think the other one in the A tier was William Byron at an A-. So great start to the season for Ross. Hopefully he can keep it up throughout the rest of the season.
Daniel Suarez I have at a B-. I struggled all the way from like B all the way down to C+. Obviously just has not had as much speed as his teammate, but has also ran better than last year. Already has more top 5s and only 1 fewer top 10 than all of last year. Average finishing position up 3 spots. He's already led the second most laps in his career, and he's ran on some good teams in his career. And right now, it's only sits 8 points out of a playoff spot. It's not been spectacular, but it's been solid. B-.
Yeah, same grade here. B- for Daniel Suarez. That team has improved from last year. Again, they're exceeding my expectations. I think he's got to clean some stuff up, but the fact that they're in contention for a playoff spot is really good. Who would have thought that you can make the argument that, Trackhouse has been, the most impressive team so far this year. And just given where I think a lot of people had them and how they're running right now, they definitely have been. It shows with both of their drivers. B- for Daniel Suarez. Let's see if he could keep it up.
All right, well, that was our quarter of the year progress reports. Pretty aligned on most of them. I think the most difference we had was a letter grade, maybe a letter grade and a half. Definitely know, I think, overall where we're expecting some teams to pick up, and already some teams that I think we fully expect their grade to be much different come the halfway mark, such as Christopher Bell, who I think we both agree, at least based on his current streak, is
he's
definitely on the upward. Then you have, like, in the opposite direction, Kurt Busch, who is trending downwards. Not all of his own doing, but sometimes these things, they just unravel.
Yeah, no, I'm a little worried about that too, but I didn't think that team would even be sniffing the playoffs right now. I thought,
for sure. But I still think if they're, still, based on the speed they saw earlier in the year, if they continue to run like the way they have lately, I think it's gonna be continuing to drop down on that. But
I would agree with that.
It'll be interesting where we sit at the halfway mark.
Hi, Brandon Monroe here. Thanks for watching our video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our new content.